Brownlow, oh, God almighty, not again. That's all they meet is Brownlow medalists. That's all they can show you is the Brownlow medal. I won the what's the Brownlow medal? Oh, if you don't mind, umpire, please. Oh, it's a shocking thing indeed. Oh. I like that. I like that. I like that. I like that.
Jack Dyer felt insulted when a Sporting Globe writer in 1935 nicknamed him Captain Blood after the year's hit movie. Dyer protested to his club's secretary at being branded a murderous swashbuckler. But the wise man told 20-year-old Jack it was a compliment. One day, he said, they'll put your name on jam tins. And today the old outlaw is hero to all the larrikins and showmen whom the fans have loved and loved to loathe through a century of league football. The wild men of the 1990s still cut a swathe through the opposition lines, just as Dyer did. And when they shoot, they have nerves of steel.
I just love the game so much, and I play with passion. Once you cross that white line, that's it, she's on.
I've had some great duels over the times, and hopefully there'll be still some great duels left, but that's what really drives you at the end of the day, is your competitive spirit.
The giants of the 90s, Lockett, Merrett and Ablett, share a unique weapon. They put the fear of God into the defenders, all with brute strength and breathtaking power. But even a wild man feels fear.
Do you love the physical stuff?
Don't mind it. Wouldn't play it if I didn't like it.
You ever taken a backward step?
Oh, well, I'd like to tell you I haven't. I'd like to think I haven't, but we're only human. I guess one time during another we've eased off a bit or whatever, but yeah, we're only human. There's been, a couple of players that certainly held in very high respect. When you look in their eye, you know they're fair income.
Who?
Rick Kennedy for one. Mickey Martin's another one. Got a nice evil look in their eye. They'd probably be the two toughest men.
Mickey's a very attractive fella, isn't he?
Wouldn't win in beauty contests. Neither would I.
Today's full forwards are the latest in a century of gladiators who've entertained and enraged us. Footy has known all sorts of hard men. Blokes who bend point posts, who bend each other, who bend the rules, and those whose audacity could outrage or charm an enemy. E.J. Whitten was near the end of his 321-game career when he called on his renowned gamesmanship and umpire Don Jolly to distract the young Peter McKenna.
I'd kicked 5 goals up to just before half-time, and Teddy said, "Joel, get over here." And Jolly was a great jokester too, and he said, "What are you calling me over here for?" He said, "Look, just give me a bit of a breather." He said, "I'm stuffed chasing this mongrel," he said.
Physically, it was pretty hard. The South Australians jumped into us, but all in all, I thought it was a pretty poor match.
You took a couple of nasty knocks at it, Ron.
Yes, Ted, you weren't protecting me too well. Where were you at those times? I was a bit worried.
I was looking after the other fellas.
Whitten, Barassi, Dyer and their mates have shared our living rooms since the advent of television. We've lived with them longer than we have any statesman or captain of industry. We've gone through their changes, often known them more intimately than our own families, and we've endured their brightest and darkest hours. We've worshipped the strengths and forgiven the weaknesses of each generation of heroes, and we consider ourselves blessed to live through this era of players who run hard, tackle fiercely and show remarkable skill. Their game is ours, an unruly sport where the ball isn't round, where the laws aren't rigid, where the players aren't padded, and where anything can happen, and usually does. And where even the strictest coaches yearn for the odd ratbag to keep themselves sane.
You know, they say you've got to have a character in your team. You do. You've got to have. You cannot win a grand. Well, you won't even get to a grand final without a lot of character and steel in the side. But also you've got to have characters, I think.
The hardest part of telling the stories of football's characters is convincing people they're true. Who in 50 years will believe the larrikin tales of Edward James Whitten? Who'll accept that a little balding man and this stick-like figure lasted longer than anyone else, or that there were wizards who had the ball on a string? How shall we explain that men whose records show so few games deserve to be hailed as gods? And as sport becomes even more businesslike in the next century, what will they think of characters who made us laugh at their misfortune? Some misadventures have already passed into mythology, like the tall but true tale told by Brownlow medalist Neil Roberts of an old-time Tasmanian coach named Nunky Ayres, whose oratory turned inevitable defeat into unthinkable victory.
Half-time, he knew his team could do it, so he went to the boot stutter and he got a pair of pliers, and he pulled out a tooth in front of everybody and made it bleed, and let the blood run down here, and put the pliers and the tooth alongside the boot last, and got up and started to speak. And he said to the trainer, take all the screws out of the hinges of the door and just leave the door standing there. And after this blood-curdling address, he said, righto men, follow me out there. Well, he ran through the door, ran straight through the door and crashed out into the ground. They jumped the fence and they won by 7 goals. It was an amazing feat. He never got his tooth back. But anyway, one of the blokes who played in that match was up in the Riverina, and he thought he'd try it. He was in the grand final. They were down 7 goals at 3/4 time. He did everything that Nunky did, but the bloke left one screw in each hinge. He laid himself out. He broke his collarbone, and the team stacked up behind him, and they got done by 10.
What's the moral of that story?
Check the hinges before you run through a door.
Whale! Tony, what's wrong with Richmond?
What's wrong with Curly? Don't give me that bull.
Brian the Whale Roberts is a giant from an age when footballers thought sports science was a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. The often told yarn of the Richmond doctor giving him an orange Smartie to curb a hangover before a big game is indeed true.
He said, look, he said, can I see you for a minute? He took me to a little alcove in the old Adelaide Oval rooms, and he said, I don't want anybody to see this, because if they do, I'm in trouble. and he gave me an orange pill. Anyhow, I swallowed it and away I went, and 10 minutes later he said, "How are you feeling?" Well, I said, "I've never felt better." So out I go and I kill him.
While the whale got high on Smarties, psychological motivation was something that young wild men got for the price of a movie ticket.
When I first started playing football, all I wanted to do was run through brick walls, and when the Rocky theme came out, well, geez, I thought I was Rocky. I thought I was Stallone, you know. And,
did you watch it a few times?
Oh, I watched it about 30 odd times. The best movie ever made, I reckon. But
you can hum the tune, can you?
Oh yes. Dun, 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 dun.
The 1986 Brownlow medal produced a shock result.
When Dipper and Greg Williams shared the 86 Brownlow medal, some likened it to Rocky winning the Nobel Peace Prize, a rare tribute to the tough men who'd spent many a Monday night at the tribunal. Dippy Domenico spread his exuberance around, but in the classic grand final of modern times, the 1989 epic, he copped it too. After this, what did Dipper call for? A Bex? An ambulance? No, just a drink. And despite suffering a punctured lung from a collision with Gary Ablett, he somehow played out the match. Dipper even had a song written about him. But only one footballer became a pop idol and had a Beatle haircut. Peter McKenna.
Remember, a man must try.
There was a line there, wealthy widows knock on your door.
Well, that's never happened to me.
McKenna fronted a Saturday morning TV show with a young drummer named Daryl Summers. That was until he and Summers started wrestling on the show, a few hours before McKenna had to play footy for Collingwood.
Unfortunately, that afternoon I didn't get a kick. So I got to football training on the Tuesday night. Neil Mann was our coach, and he said, well, the committee has met and we've decided you make up your mind whether you have a TV career or play football for Collingwood, so I didn't have much choice. So that was the end of it, and I was the only guy in the history of television to have been replaced by an ostrich.
And a magnificent goal from McKenna.
McKenna was a heartthrob, but Lou Richards only ever stole one heart, and that was during a celebrity game inside Pentridge.
Lou had a murderer on him, and for 3/4 he punched the daylights out of Lou. And at 3/4 time he said to Albert, what about changing opponents? I'll swap you. He said, oh, that's all right, yeah, okay, Lou. So they swapped. Halfway through the last quarter, Lou yelled out, hey, Albert, give us my murderer back. I think this bloke loves me.
He grew up on the Kalgoorlie goldfields, in shanties with cloth walls and dirt floors. So when Alec Epps was chosen as runner for Victoria against Western Australia, the entire population of Kalgoorlie went to Perth to see their Bambino in his hour of fame. But coach Bob Davis made Mad Alec wait till the last quarter before he was finally given a message to deliver and he could show off to the loved ones.
So I've gone around the boundary and waved to a few relations that I knew were there, and then I got to Noel Teasdale, and I'm getting to him, and he can see that I'm coming, and he knows there's a message. Well, players don't like runners coming to them, you know. So he took off, and he went over to the other side of the ground, and then when I got to him, the player had gone down that side, so down he went down that side of the ground, and I was absolutely buggered when I got there, you know. And he goes, Jesus cookie, you know. I said, listen, I've got a message for you, Teaser. He goes, what's the message? I've gone, Christ, I've forgotten. Listen, hang around, I'll be right back. I'll go and see what the message is. Woofer barred me. Didn't give me another message for the rest of the day. He wouldn't let me go out. It was an embarrassment.
Epps was called the Kookaburra. He was footy's laughing jackass.
Alec, today was a wonderful win. Did you think that you'd win this from the very start?
Oh, well, Pretty confident, Lou. Not overconfident, but you've got to have a certain amount of confidence, you know. We were very confident, yes.
Epps even fought with his own coach.
I had a few run-ins with John Coleman. I actually had a fight with John Coleman, and I missed him when I hit the club doctor. I threw a punch and he ducked and I hit the club doctor. That was real trouble.
For all the headaches that the larrikins have caused, they've been loved by the faithful. Carlton fans in the 80s worshipped three desperados, Johnson, Buckley and Rhys Jones. Team spirit and premierships were built around them, despite their bad habits.
Would Buckley look at the scoreboard to see the race results?
Oh no, he'd normally have the runner tally. So we'd have all that teed up beforehand. Actually, I'll never forget one day we had a quaddie. I think there was Wayne Johnson, myself and Jimmy had a quaddie going, and we were out at Waverley, and actually the last leg we knew we were alive, and David Parkin was bellowing and hollering. We were playing Collingwood, I think it was the last match of the year, and in about 85 it must have been, and the race was actually on the large screen, and with Parkin bellowing, I mean, I felt like telling him to shut up so we could hear the rest of the race.
If you're playing football for any other reason other than really enjoyment at this stage, you cannot get the best out of yourself. You shouldn't be here, you should be in some other sport. Few players come to a club now that's got such a lot of pride in its recent performances. I mean, North Melbourne is, they do things in a really good way, a big way, a successful way.
Ron Barassi's drive for professionalism harnessed many a free spirit. He fired the powder keg inside slamming Sammy Kekovich. But Keka went into hiding just when North's first premiership heroes were being immortalised in their hour of ecstasy.
Okay, another one. Come on, into the camera. Nice and easy. 1, 2... Okay.
There's a big photo of North Melbourne's premiership. Only 19 players and Brassie are in it. Only one player missed that premiership. It's the first premiership North Melbourne ever got in 1975, and only one player missed it. It was Sammy. They waited about 4 hours on the Sunday morning for him to front, and just never failed to get there. So a little bit of bad luck, wasn't it?
Was there a reason offered?
I think she was. Oh, I think there was, yes.
Keka found a position for the Sherrin which didn't come naturally to the most photographed footballer of the 1930s, Gordon Nuts Coventry. But Nuts, who was the biggest scorer in the game's history, was still bagging the goodies 30 years after he hung up his jockstrap.
Let's remember, and also for your wife, the red tulip continental...
She's unlucky.
Why is that?
She's on a diet.
Well, thanks very much. Nuts Coventry. Let's remember football.
The rich rewards of footy never came to North's rugged halfback of the 50s, Dodger Ryan. He was a battler at a club which had never known success. The Dodger remembers getting just one prize.
The only time I did win something was I already pinched it before the game was over.
What was that?
Oh, some vase, a crystal vase it was, and it was Geelong and North at North. And it was there, so I pinched it and put it in my locker. And after the game, they're looking for the vase to present it to the best player. And they said, who's the best player? They said, Dodger Ryan. And my big mate says, he's already got it.
Where do you start with the story of Jack Dyer? His notorious strong-arm tactics? Or perhaps the way he murdered the language as the game's most quoted commentator?
If You Don't Mind Umpire became pretty famous.
If you don't mind umpire, please. well, it wasn't. It was an automatic saying that too. Oh, if you don't mind umpire, please.
Dyer is probably the most
promotable and markable fella that's ever been, Jack Dyer. I mean, in the 30s as Captain Blood, I mean, he probably got more publicity in the 30s than most of the fellas are getting today.
Now watching makes a fella hungry.
For all Jack's notoriety, the Dyer that Richards and Davis remember from World of Sport is of an innocent in the big wide world. They'll never let Jack forget the night a transvestite performer came on the set of league teams.
My Bare Lady was a show, I think probably well before its time out at St Kilda, where there were, I think they were gentlemen done up as ladies.
Anyway, they sat on our knees whilst we did the commercial. Anyway, when they left after the commercial, Jack Dyer said to Bob and I, "Oh, gee, the one sitting on my knee was a fantastic sort." I said, "Jack, it's a bloke."
You didn't know what they were?
I didn't know what they were. Like I was a good Catholic lad.
Dyer was a schoolboy at St Ignatius in Richmond when he walked into the Punt Road Oval to ask if he could get a game.
And I was, 16. I went down there, 16, like I hadn't had a shave or anything like that. They used to call me the kid.
As the kid's arms grew, so did the most awesome reputation in the history of football. In a then record 310 games, he turned bold foes into carcasses.
Coming in fast at 40 knots with a look of savage fire. Captain Blood, the infamous Jack Dyer.
Well, I loved that, testing your strength on someone like that. I loved that, going through and to see if he could stand up in front of you, you know. In fact, there was a lot in football that used to test you out. They'd give you a test. And if the test went all right, they'd leave you alone. But if it didn't go all right, they'd give you plenty of it.
The captain's men, like Max Oppie, grew in his likeness.
His mother told me to bring him up. She told me that.
You reckon you made a good job of it?
I reckon I made a hell of a good job of it too, Max, you know, because you were a bit wild in your approach to everything, I thought, anyhow. Your hair used to stand on end and go red in the face. And,
not like Fraser, sure.
Well, not quite as bad as Fraser, but just about. I thought you were learning off Fraser.
You know I never did anything in anger.
No, you were skull-blooded.
No,
that's
I never did anything in anger.
About you.
When Dyer introduced the drop punt in the 1930s, his kick was called crazy. He taught it to generations of pimply-faced youngsters, and old Jack never forgot where the goals were. His leadership inspired one young Richmond defender to show courage on a far greater battlefield than footy. Bill Cosgrove lined up for the Tigers in 1942, at the same time as he enlisted for the Air Force.
Oh, he would have been a champion. There would be no doubt about that. He would have been a champion. He would have. But then he went away in the war and never came back. Never saw him again, sort of business.
Cosgrove teamed with another league star, Melbourne's Bluey Truscott, as fighter pilots. Cosgrove even decorated his fuselage with the Tigers' war cry, "Eat 'em alive," and named his aircraft the Jack Dyer. He was shot down 5 times, survived 44 days in a raft from Java to Western Australia, and finally died when he crashed a bow fighter named Jack Dyer VI in New Guinea. It was a month before the grand final of 1943. Captain Blood dedicated that flag to Cozzy. Even when he posed with the pigeons in Trafalgar Square, the cameras were never far away. For Dyer has been a football legend longer than anyone in the game's history, and always a photographer's delight, though the legend was sometimes a myth.
The ball bounced and Jack hit the ball on, and I'm turning to go around after it, and I've taken the photo in direct line, and it looks as though Jack's given me a nice old swipe across the head. Whereas in fact that didn't happen. Jack wouldn't hit anybody, of course.
Never hit anyone in my life. You wouldn't could that.
That's how that photo's been around for a long while now, hasn't it?
Through all his notoriety, Dyer has kept a disarming humility.
I like to be called Jack Dyer. That's what I liked, you know. If anyone recognised me and not as Captain Blood, it was Jack Dyer. How Jack, how are you? I always liked that, but then all of a sudden someone will roar out Captain Blood or something like that, and it upsets your whole half hour.
Indeed, stand by for the regret you thought you'd never hear.
There's only one thing I regret, mainly, because I didn't believe in Brownlow medals or anything like that. I believed in playing to win and playing as hard as you could for your side. You forget about medals and all those sort of things like that. And I was leading. I had about 17 votes when I broke down that time. I was going easy at the time. I could have won a Brownlow medal and then been Captain Blood. I think it would have been the best double I'd ever had. but I never broke down, so I never had a chance to get one after that.
Would you have liked to have won a Brownlow?
Yeah, I suppose it looked all right in yourself. You know, that's one of the things you never ever got. But it's a great honour to be called the best football in the league, I think, anyhow. No, there were better footballs than me. Look, I was rough edges. I had a lot of rough edges. Those Brownlow medals have got no edges at all. They're all smooth. And
Dyer is a freak. He's the most popular. He's the most original. He's the best all-round football person the game's ever seen.
What age are you now?
80. I think it's 80. I lost count about a year ago. I did, but I think it's 80. I think it's 80. 15th of November I was born.
And what do you want from the rest of your life, Jack? What do you want from the rest of your life?
I just want to be have good health more than anything. Just good health. That'll do me. I'm not a what would you say, a millionaire or anything like that. I don't want to be a millionaire because it's got too many little points and sharp shots and everything, and you lose a lot of friends. But I've kept all my friends, and I'd like to still keep them.
In a day and age where the words champion and legend are distorted to billiard, I mean, you've only got to drive the coach home and you're a legend. Dyer is a true legend.
Twists clear of the defence and passes to Gabelic, who's unmarked as he streaks away into an open goal.
The crowd of 102,000 roared themselves hoarse as Big Gabbo tore 70 yards down the ground, bouncing and dribbling the ball before he goaled to give the Magpies a 3-point lead. If ever an incident overshadowed an event, it was Gabbo's run in the final quarter of the 64 grand final. Gabbo's gallop and Jez's mark in 1970 are the two most replayed highlights of football history. Ray Gabelich was the dinosaur who launched the run that never ended.
In between the wing and the half-forward flank, on the right in front of the northern stand. So, what's that, about 75 yards, I suppose.
And you did it in 7.5 seconds?
Easily, without a doubt.
How many bounces?
Faster than the human eye, I was.
How many bounces?
I don't know, never counted them. Everybody said it was that way, but I still say it was under control all the way. Without a doubt. Under control. And I knew which way I was running too. And that run put us in front of Melbourne. So that's all I was concerned about, is winning that damn premiership that year.
And you didn't?
No, Crompton came back later, and the back pocket player, saw him yesterday and abused him.
Cowboy! Are they biting?
No, mate, they're not. But it's a lot better than working.
I suppose this is where every great old wild man finishes up?
Well, only if they're very lucky, I think, mate, yeah.
Cowboy Neil was a lovable country bumpkin.
How did you get the name Cowboy, Kevin? Oh, well, I started calling everybody around the surf club, you know. Instead of calling...
What surf club?
Warrnambool.
You're a surfer? Oh, God, you're at home.
Yeah, instead of calling him other things, I used to call him a cowboy.
But in 1971, Cowboy was the villain of a grand final controversy involving Peter Hudson, the goal-getter who dominated footy from the day of his 1967 debut when he kicked 4 of Hawthorn's 6 goals.
Kick from 45 yards out is right on line, and he's now just 1 short of the coveted record.
Well, I wasn't nervous, Mike, at all. I was more...
In only 129 injury-interrupted games for Hawthorn, Hudson ran into more open goals than any goal sneak in history. But on Grand Final Day 1971, needing just 5 to break the all-time record of 150, he got a thick ear from the Cowboy.
A heavy encounter between Murray and Heath, and the Saints' vice-captain is limping badly. Hudson is sandwiched, and he too is in need of attention.
He was the fella that had been the difference between us winning and losing during the year. Kicked 6 or so goals every time we played him, and I thought, you know, if I can slow him down a bit and he only kicks 2 or 3, well, perhaps we've got a better chance of winning. It was a grand final. I didn't feel it was a sacrifice. I just thought it was something that had to be done.
Did that justify hitting him?
No, probably not. I don't think you can justify that in any sense of the matter. But, you know, he weren't in the position to be thinking about justifying it.
And then along came Neil Baum, and he sorted out Carlton's chances once and for all.
The MCG in the 70s was a playground for wild men. In 1973, Neil Baum massacred Carlton.
He's hit Southby and, well, 2 or 3 of them, you know, he's King hit them, and the umpire, I think Ian Robertson was umpiring, and Ian, you know, in his own way, he didn't feel it wasn't, I think he's paid free kicks, but, you know, Robbo looked at it even later on, and, you know, umpires hardly ever admit they're wrong, but Robbo was wrong, and, but as I said, Baum was the one that won the game, and more so than what my knock was. Because, I mean, at that time, I was nearly finished. I was a has-been.
Nichols is down!
Yes, it is the man in white who is the real hero.
You know, the task of an umpire is never easy. In the course of a game that lasts about 2 hours, he has to make something like 100 decisions, many of those controversial.
Controversial was John Peck's haymaker against South Australia's Brian Sawley. It filled page 1 of Melbourne's Sun newspaper. The death of a pope was on page 2.
Well, there will be a great story blowing up about Peck, of course. He's to go before the tribunal in the morning for allegedly striking one of the players. I feel that there are a good many extenuating circumstances to help Peck.
For all of the wild men, footy has burnt its brand on their souls. The cup has been their holy grail. And the passing of 3 decades hasn't eased the frustration of Des Tuddenham, who suffered defeats in 3 grand finals of the 60s and 70s. In 64, he saw victory whisked away.
Desi, how do you feel about today's loss?
Naturally disappointed, Lou, but still, well, Melbourne won it and we didn't.
In 1970, he accidentally flattened his team's potential match winner, Peter McKenna. And as captain in 66, Tuddy made an error of judgment that he'll take to his grave.
So if I'd have taken one more bounce, I'm sure we would have won the game.
You thought about that many times?
Oh, many times, yeah. I get very upset. I don't watch the replays, actually. I don't like watching them. The fact is we lost.
The boundary line, 28.5 lines.
The tears that Tuddy has shed show the flag's power to humble even wild men. If Collingwood had won, things would have been different. Tuddy might have become Collingwood's coach and hero.
If I'd have coached them, I think it would have been a huge turnaround for Collingwood.
So in your life, was the 66 grand final and not taking that bounce the worst thing that ever happened?
I'm sure of that, yes.
The worst?
The worst, yeah, no doubt.
Nothing comes close?
No.
League footballers today have to answer the same question that their forebears have faced for 100 years.
You ever taken a backward step?
No, never.
There's often times when you know there's a big opportunity for you to get crunched and hurt, but it's all part of the game, and if you're in that position you really just have to plant your feet and hold your ground.
You ever taken a backward step?
Never felt that ever in my football career, never.
You ever take a backward step?
Oh yes, everyone's got fear in football. Some show it better than others. The ones that don't show it and don't know how to overcome it probably get belted and get knocked out more, but no, I had lots of moments when I was frightened and wondering what was going to happen next.
Said people reckon I was a big dumb bastard, but I was smart enough to keep away from blokes like Nicker. I never upset him at all. If he wanted to have the ball, he could have it.
To me, I never found football humorous as such. I couldn't get there like Lou and Jack Dyer and Crackers do. They get there and tell story after story after story. But to me, football is so serious.
Of all the courageous men playing league football, few have been as resolute as Richmond's Francis Burke.
Look at the blood just oozing out of his forehead. He is a marvellous guy, and if he kicks this goal, he'd be an inspiration.
How tough was Francis Burke?
Very tough. Recall out at Glenferrie one day, we were playing Hawthorn and broke his leg right up in the top back pocket, and the player's race was down the forward pocket at the other end, walked off the ground with a broken leg. You have to be tough to do that.
McGee ahead past the Burke, and Burke with great courage.
Royce Hart told me that you walked from one end of the ground with a broken leg.
Yes, I did, but I didn't know it was broken at the time.
It's a game which calls for vigorous masculine qualities.
They didn't come any more masculine than Charlie Sutton. 5 feet 6 inches, 15 stone. The epitome of the Bulldog spirit. In Footscray's only premiership, the Blue Bloods of Melbourne couldn't get past Charlie's shorts.
You see some of the gear they're wearing now, I think their voice might change over a period of time.
You would have had difficulty in Warwick Kappa's shorts, wouldn't you?
Oh, I wouldn't have fit over my thighs. The whole complete set.
Today's strongman isn't always as he seems. John Worsfold is a mild-mannered Perth pharmacist who the West Coast fans regard as their protector and Superman.
Well, people have sort of alluded to the fact that I'm a bit of a Clark Kent, wearing glasses and working as a pharmacist during the day, and then taking the glasses off and playing footy on the weekend. But yeah, the old white line fever is something that's always tried to be labelled upon myself.
Worsfold is your classic mean halfback, but Essendon's Ronnie Andrews was totally wild, mad enough to scare lunatics. He needed to hit David Rees-Jones only once.
I think that was Ronnie just letting me know that his presence was out there and he wasn't going to put up with too much.
Did you think of squaring up, or was it sort of like you wouldn't do that too?
No, I don't think so. No, you pick your mark in certain areas, and Ronnie, I think when he hit him, they stayed hit.
Jacko, as he's quick to point out, is a purist in everything he does. Ronnie, a pub brawler from way back.
Ronnie and Jacko put their heads together and made a mint out of their madness.
Still on his feet. Oh, 1 and 1. It's the longest 2 minutes of their lives, these fellas. There's the gong. It's over. Mark Jackson, the winner on a split decision of the Super Bout over Ron Andrews. Good fight. Well, it was an excellent fight. Very good, hard, slugging fight. Never again, he said.
Jacko turned footy upside down and finished up owning a gold mine. Ronnie found peace in a pub on the Murray, where the drinkers never caused trouble. He's just upriver from that other wild man, Carl Ditterich.
Carl took my jumper. He was a kid I admired from the word go. He was a boy who had polio and was in irons.
For years before and after his retirement from footy, Big Carl has shunned the prying media.
Carl wanted a private life and he's got it, and good luck to him.
His wish to live in seclusion is echoed by his modern-day equal, the strong man whose distaste for interviews has only served to heighten the intrigue surrounding Plugger.
When Carl Dittrich walked away from football, he really wanted nothing more to do with the limelight. Are you going to be the same, Tony?
I guess I'll be pretty much the same, yep.
Be hard to get an interview with you in 10 years' time?
Yeah, I'd say it'd be nearly impossible.
The Lockett of the 90s has mellowed from the well-documented tantrums of when the media-shy country boy first hit town.
I don't ever think I was shy. I'm not a real shy person. I just don't like giving interviews.
You've got to keep bloody churning away to make it happen. We've got to make it happen. You can't bloody just stand out in the outer and bloody think it's going to. Working on maybe, if it comes out to me sort of thing. You've got to go in and get it, and we did just that, fellas. Bloody good effort. Proud of you.
Old Danahers don't die. They just kick on to greener pastures. And though the family and friends are all that watch him coach the Riverina to victory over Sydney's representative team, one day the country drawl of Terry Danaher might be a change from the histrionics of the AFL's coaching guru.
That's the answer to everything.
Watching the passions of hot gospeling coaches is a sport in itself. Their brains burst, their veins clog, and their surrounds shatter like glass. The first professional coach, Jack Worrell, brought a rigid fitness regime and 3 flags to the working men of Carlton. But the players had him sacked because he was no fun. 80 years later, Carlton's coaches, psychologists and dietitians are still trying to understand those players who just want to have a good time.
You know, I always said I'd give it up when I stopped enjoying football, and I did at the end of '92, and that was one of the reasons. I just really wasn't enjoying my football as much as I was previously, and you know, to be fed yoghurt and bananas after a game of footy instead of a can of Foster's was pretty foreign to me, but anyway, that's the way they decided to go about it.
Though he won the Norm Smith medal and sold enough papers to clear a forest, David Rhys-Jones was the coach's worst nightmare. But the dietitians who despaired at Rhys-Jones would have been driven to drink by Cowboy Neil.
How was your diet?
If it was dead, I ate it. I'd get up in the morning, Saturday morning before the game, and open the fridge up, and what was in there I ate. If it was a hard-boiled egg or a bit of toast or a cold chop, didn't matter. I think it was all bullshit what you ate. Doesn't make you blow any better. You can't convince me of that either. I used to have all these blokes walking around the room drinking this sausage and, you know, all that. They'd go out and wouldn't get a kick.
Cowboy had a hamburger before one game, he was telling me.
Yeah, I've never gone that far. I've had a steak, but not a hamburger.
In the Saints-only premiership back in 1966, Cowboy booted half of their 10 goals.
Full forward was good because if you kick a couple of goals, you get your name in the paper.
Long before the Cowboy and Plugger hogged the goals for St Kilda, the 1950s skipper, Neil Roberts, boasted football's most famous boot polisher, Graham Kennedy. But the team never finished higher than 8th.
I mean, we went without a lot of things. I remember we had a chip heater for a hot shower, and we didn't have a doctor. We had a dentist. We had great teeth, but the injuries weren't the best.
Hello? Healy off, Ellingworth on. Bloody weakest piss. I mean, don't look at me like that. How many kicks have you got?
As gospeling coaches go, Ronald Dale Barassi was a hairy-chested evangelist.
Bigger circle. Come on, Sam, come on. Hey, come on.
I used to have, I think, what they call white line fever. Yeah, when I got near a footy ground, match day.
Barassi breathed fire and brimstone. But there was one time that Sam Kekovich gave the brimstone back.
Position on the stand side.
I can remember one night at training, Sam running through Barassi in a training little stint, you know, because they were always at each other, Sam getting to training late or not fronting.
Was it deliberate?
When Sam ran through Ron, I would think it was, yeah, it was excellent, you know. Everyone laughed, but Brass picked himself up, never said a word.
Just as Kecker's actions said more than 1,000 words, Alan Jeans used a simple lesson at Hawthorn one evening to change a young man's life. Young Bertie Dipier-Domenico had been left out of the Hawks team, so he gave the coach an earful. Jeans quietly ushered him into the coach's room.
So we went into the room, and the first thing he did was throw me against the wall like a copper would, and spread my legs and had his elbow up to my chin, and you know, and he said, "Don't you ever do that in front of people again, especially here at the Hawthorn Football Club. Who do you think you are?" And just stripped me down, and then I started to cry. I'm going, "Oh, I'm sorry, Abby." Well, you know, and I think that was a good turning point. Well, it was a turning point in my football career. It gave me the opportunity to wake up to myself.
Just as Dipper never forgets that turning point in his life, footy has had a dramatic effect on millions of people. It's overtaken our lives, and though it's a business for many, you get the feeling that the wild men would do it all again, for nothing, just for the hell of it.
Our sport is unique.
We'd have played for nothing, I think, when it was all boiled down. We loved the football. I think when they all say they're hungry, but I think if things got a bit tough, you know, that all these fellas would play for nothing. I'm sure they would. They all loved the game like I used to love it.
It's about enjoyment, that's what it really is. To me it is anyway. If you win, it just makes it that much more enjoyable.
But it wasn't the money. It was the locker room love. And a lot of people don't believe that you can actually love blokes in the purest sense. And you can. And you miss it. I miss all that. It was, you know, it's regrettable to give the game away. There's a little bit of a touch of the gutter in all footballers, and that's something I think that appeals to people.
I've been very lucky to be doing something I've loved for 19 seasons.
That's all I want to do out of footy is just playing a final series and just love to win a grand final.
Just dream of the grand final, do you?
Just dream of the grand final. I think that's what we're all here for. That's what you should be here for.
Can you sign this autograph now while we're here? That looks good to me.
There you go, mate.
Thanks, Tony.
Little boy, you look so clear around the eyes.
I thought I was a bit of a mug out there, really.
What they've got in store for you, you may not realise. So be careful when you hear the voice.
They're Yemen. You wouldn't credit that, those empires are Yemen.
Watch out, little boy, don't lose your balls.
We'd all like to be 25 again. I'd like to be able to remember when I was 25. That'd be even better.
Oh, I'm sorry, Abby. He wouldn't let me go out. He realised it was an embarrassment.
Yep, well, I've got a little present here for you.
Watch out, little boy, don't lose your balls.